There is a verse in the Quran that is used invariably by Mohammedan apologists that, if anyone slew a person unless it be for murder or for spreading mischief in the land, it would be as if he slew the whole people. And if anyone saved a life, it would be as if he saved the life of the whole people. Are they being truthful?
It gives me absolutely no pleasure whatsoever to tell our audience again and again and again that, like everything else that we have been showing regarding Muhammadan Islam and its followers, the above verse is misquoted with deliberate falsification to pretend to the mostly ignorant and trusting world that Muhammadan Islam is a peaceful and peace-loving belief system. We heard this verse recited by Iqbal Sakrani of the Muslim Council of Great Britain in public, in Trafalgar Square, in front of millions of viewers after the London suicide bombings on the 7th of July 2005. This was in response to the fact that the suicide bombers were Muhammadan Muslims, raised, educated, and taken care of by the tax-paying people of Britain, and in return, with typical loving Islam, they mass slaughtered innocent civilians in the name of Allah. All of a sudden, the Muslim Council was galvanized into action to distance itself from such barbaric acts and blame the so-called radical Muslims for these misdeeds. The very same Muslim Council, which never demonstrated against any and all outrages committed in the name of Allah, Muhammad, or Islam, anywhere and everywhere in the world during the past decades, was then doing its utmost to pretend that it cared for the welfare of the people of this nation. With their usual deceitfulness, Iqbal Sakrani, Muhammad Abdul Bari, Inayat Banglawala, all of whom are of non-Arabic background, and Tariq Ramadan, as well as many other luminary Muhammadans, pretended to be outraged at these insane acts. They then shed floods of crocodile tears in public with the assistance and compliance of the stupid and criminally negligent British media. I needed to give our listeners this background, especially for those who are not British. Now, I shall address the Quranic verse above from Surah Al-Ma'idah, which tells a perverted version of the biblical story of Cain and Abel, after Cain had murdered his brother. I would like our audience to listen very carefully to the beginning of the verse, which is actually the crux of this chapter. Al-Ma'idah 5.32. On that account, we ordained for the children of Israel that if anyone slew a person unless it be for murder or for spreading mischief in the land, it will be as if he slew the whole people. And if anyone saved a life, it would be as if he saved the life of the whole people. This verse, like hundreds of others in the Quran, is plundered and perverted from the Bible and or from Jewish rabbinic traditions. This particular one is from Pirkei Avot, sayings of the fathers in the Mishnah. Ladies and gentlemen, when the above verse is recited in full, one would understand that it was Allah addressing the people of Israel, and only the people of Israel, but neither Muhammad nor his Arab followers. By deliberately, willfully, and with aforethought cutting out, we ordained for the children of Israel, Iqbal Sakrani and all the others who quoted and still quote this truncated verse, changed the perception of the unwary listeners and made them believe that it is part of peaceful Muhammadan Islamic teachings. That was, and still is, their whole purpose and intent, and they have been and still are succeeding in their deception and fraudulence. If any of you need further proof, you can look at hundreds upon hundreds of Muhammadan preachers on YouTube who quote the truncated, edited, or perverted version only of this verse. If this action is not dishonorable, what is? Why would such educated and learned men stoop to these abysmal levels of hypocrisy and mendacity if their Muhammadan Islam is so superior to all other beliefs? Why would they need to distort the Quranic verse if the Quran is as holy as they pretend it to be? Is this not a deliberate alteration of Allah's words? Does this not constitute blasphemy? How can any of them justify such dishonesty, both religious and intellectual? How could they treat their listeners, so-called believers or unbelievers, with such contempt? Since Muhammadan Muslims can do this shameless and systematic editing in the 21st century in front of millions of people, then how dare they tell us that the Quran that we have today has never been altered in the last 1400 years? They have been getting away with these intellectual, moral and religious perversions because most human beings do not know the subjects at hand and hence are easily duped by well-dressed and well-spoken people whom they think are paragons of virtue and knowledge. Well, ladies and gentlemen, they are not, as we have been demonstrating repeatedly in our series, using the very Muhammadan Arabic sources to prove the opposite. The very internet that is used by the followers of Muhammad to propagate their messages of hate, of war, of superiority, of racism and intellectual fraud is also enlightening a mostly ignorant world about the real characteristics of Muhammadan Islam. In fact, the internet shows all their depraved behavior of mass murder, kidnappings, beheadings, stoning to death, genital mutilation, desecration of all kinds of holy places, etc., etc., perpetrated upon both unbelievers as well as other believing sects of Muhammadan Islam. Can any follower of Muhammad prove what we are revealing here as erroneous or mendacious? We await their usual attacks based upon denial of facts and reality.